All right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to say hi today. Hi. I don't even know if you saw that. Okay. So today we're going to go through lesson 712. So if you open up your books to page 263, you can follow along with me. I'm going to show you a few things today that are going to help us to get through this. Let me really adjust my screen here. Here we go. That's going to help us get through this and understand a little bit about what's going on. I think, oh, there we go. That light helps. Okay. So yesterday I alluded and was talking to you a little bit about zeros and decimal numbers. So today I just want to go, we're going to go through page 263 together and then leave you to some practice on your own a little bit later. I want you to take a look at number 1. And again, yesterday we talked about this a little bit, so a lot of this should be a review from yesterday. What happens if we insert a 0 to the right of a whole number? So for instance, here in this chart here, you'll see, like for instance, if we have a 3 and we insert a 0 to the right of it, what was this? 3 by itself is 3 ones. If we insert a 0 to the right of it, it becomes 30. So it changes the value. So inserting a 0 to the right of my number, of a whole number, changes the value of a number. So remember, we're thinking about that worth of that, okay? So inserting a 0 changes the value. Or even like if we had here a double-digit number like 67 and we insert a 0, that changes it. Because right now in 67 we have what, 7 ones and 6 tens, so 60 and 7, but if we added a 0 here, that changes that and it makes it 7 ones and 7, this one changes it to 7 tens now, so the value of 70, and 600, so the value of 600, so it changes the value again, right? So if I'm looking here in my book and we're adding here, what happens if we insert a 0 to the right of a whole number? Well, just like we said, changes the value of our numbers. So it changes the value of the digits, okay? So we have to make sure that we understand that. This here is to the right of a whole number. So good thing for us to note there. What happens if we insert a 0 to the right of a decimal number on the other hand? Well, if we take a decimal number, for instance, as it's showing us here, we have this decimal 0.3, or if we've learned so far is 3/10. If I insert a 0 to the right of that, does it change the value of the 3? Or are we still at 3/10? Look here. You see my handy dandy set here? So for instance, if I have 0 ones and 3/10, right? This is my decimal point. Okay? So 0 ones and 3/10. Sorry, this is my decimal point. I should put a little decimal point here. Let me do that. Ready? Give me a second. Here it is. There's my decimal point. Because you know I'm not going to write on my kitchen counter. Yeah, there's my decimal point. Okay, so 0.3 or 3/10. If I insert a 0 to the right of the decimal, if we happen to insert a 0 to the right of the decimal number, what does that do? What does that do to my 3? Does it change the value of the 3? No, it's still 3/10. It's just giving us 0 hundredths. Well, here we had no hundredths. All we're doing is showing that we have no hundredths. So when we look here in our book, if I'm looking at number 2. Can you follow along here? What happens if we insert a 0 to the right of the decimal number? What does it do? Well, really nothing. Okay? No change, no changes. Right? 0.3 or 3/10 and 3 hundredths or 30 hundredths here still has the same value because our 3 hasn't changed value. If you look here, for instance, if I had my 3 here and I moved it or I inserted a whole number, it's changing the value of that 3. If I keep inserting zeros to the right of a whole number in a whole number, it's pushing that whole number down, it's changing the value of that, okay? But in a decimal, it doesn't change the value to the right of it. What happens if we insert a 0 to the left of a whole number? All right, well, let's see. If I have here a 3, like as 3 ones, it's still 3 ones, right? If I put a 0 there to the left of it, what happens? What's happening? I think I heard someone say it. Nothing is happening, right? Because 3 ones is still 3 ones. You're just showing that we have 0 tens now. Well, here we had 0 tens. Now we still have 0 tens. If I wanted to add another one, still have 3. So 0, 3, 0, 0, 3, or simply 3 is the same value. So if we so look here in my book, what happens if we insert a 0 to the left of a whole number? Left of a whole number. Look here in your chart here. Oh, can you see? Yeah. Make sure you can see there. So in your chart here, I have 3. I changed it to 0, 3, still the same value. 67, 67 with the 0 in the hundreds, still the same value. So what happens if we insert a 0 to the left of a whole number? No change. We could say no change in value. Let's go ahead. No changes in value. Let's add that to number 2 as well. Because that value word, that's really important. It's talking us about how much those are worth. What happens if we insert a 0 to the left of a decimal number just after the decimal point? So here, inserting a number to the left of the decimal point. So I'm going to look here. I'm going to do it on my paper, on my board, or on my makeshift board here. Okay? So let's look here. If I have, in your book, if you follow along in your book, it shows 0.3. Okay? You see that? I'm looking right here. 0.3. Okay? So if I insert, the question is, if we insert a 0, insert means to put inside a 0 to the left of the decimal number just after the decimal point. That means I'm going to change my 3 and insert, there we go, a 0. You love my, don't you love my little voices? Yeah. I'm going to insert, right? We're going to squeeze in another 0. What happened to it? What happened to this? 3/10 here, so this is worth 3/10. If I insert a 0 to the left of it as my decimal point, it changes that 0, or it changes the value of the 3, and makes it now 3/100ths, right? Okay. So if I'm inserting, or in your book, take a look in your book here now, if I have 0.3, that's a tenths, and I insert a 0 here, that makes it 3/100ths. So it's changing the value of that. If I did the 6.71, let's do that. So 6 whole numbers and 7/10ths. So 6.7 or 6 and 7/10ths. 6 and 7/10ths, right? 6 and 7/10ths. If I'm inserting, right, squeezing in a 0 right inside, it's changing the value of the 7. The 7 is no more 7/10ths, it's now 7/100ths. Okay? So again, what happens if we insert a 0 to the left of the decimal just after the decimal point? We're changing the value of the digits. Okay? So in this case, these here are your rules of decimals. Basically, what you need to understand, are whole numbers and decimal numbers different when it comes to importing zeros? Well, let's talk about that. Let me put this aside here. So basically what you need to understand is if I have a decimal point, or if I have a whole number and a decimal, if I add zeros on a decimal end here, if I add zeros to the right of a decimal, does it change? No. If I add zeros to the left of a whole number, does it change? No. So if you're looking here, if I'm adding zeros to the outside of my number, my value is not changing because I'm not moving anything. I can even add a 0 here. Still the same value. Oh, I can even add a 0 here, and what would this be? Squeeze over here. This would be the thousandths right over here. I can put another 0 there. Doesn't change anything. This here, what I see here, is still 6 and 7/10ths. So if I'm adding zeros to the outside of my digits, it doesn't change anything. If I'm adding zeros inside my digits, squeezing it in, what my numbers are doing are they're moving, they're changing value. So here, they're changing value. Here, they're changing value. Here, I'm changing value. So if I squeeze my zeros inside, I'm changing value. Okay? Now, let's talk about that extra 0 here. Like, let's look here. All right, someone yell out to me what this is. 0. I don't want to hear 0.4. I want to hear 4/10ths. So if you said 4/10ths, kudos to you. Good job. So 4/10ths here is what we have. What if, let's just say, what if I did this? What happened? Nothing, right? Because again, My 4 is my number or my digit with value, and it hasn't moved. So my 0 just shows. In this case, it's just a placeholder. That's all. So 0.4, so if I look at something like this, let's look here. So here, if I have 0.4 and just 0.4, how are these the same or different? They are actually equal, because in this case, I'm not changing the value of my 4, okay? Look at something like this. What if I did, what if I had something, what if I did this? 3.2, just for practice. 3.2, which would be 3 and 2/10, right? What if I added a 0? And now I have 3 and 20/100ths. What is my value? Well, my 3 is still a 1 in both of these cases. My 2 are still tenths in both of these cases. I don't have any hundredths here, and I don't have any hundredths here. So they are equal, okay? In these cases, it's really good to equal them out. So I'm going to show you, let's do a little bit in our book here. Look at me, I'm trying to get you all set here. Okay, so let's look at our book here. Please open to page 263 if you haven't already. We're going to look at these number 6 here, okay? So number 6, we have 0.6 and 0.6. Well, our 6 is 6/10 here, our 6 is 6/10 here, our whole number has no value, and this case, it has no value. So what are these going to be? Equal, right here, equal. How about 0, or let's see, we have 0.25 and 0.25. Let's look at it. Here's my decimal, which makes both of my 2's worth 10s or 2/10, and both of my 5's worth 5/100ths, or in both cases the same value. My 0 here shows I have no whole numbers, and my lack of digits here shows I have no whole numbers. So what are these? Again, equal. Okay? And finally, I have, what do we have here? 0.9 and 0.90. All right, let's look at the values. In my whole number of 1's, I have no value, because 0 is no value. Then I have a decimal point. I have 9 in the 10ths place, so 9/10 and 9/10. And then I have nothing here, so nothing is no value, and 0 is no value, so I'm guessing that 9, so this would be 9/10, and this would be 90/100ths are actually the same. Okay, so when we break it down to digits, they are the same. In this case, if I had my if I had my blocks, I would show you. If I were to draw this out, like, let's see if I could draw this out. 9/10. If I were to break this into tenths. So here is 1 whole, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay? So here, I'm going to actually color it in 9 of my tenths. Each one of these is a tenth. Why? Because there's 10 groups of 10 in one. 9/10. If I were to take this same exact picture here, okay, again, we have this, and then change it into hundredths, which would mean I'd have to do this. So there are now 100 circles here. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sorry, I know that they are squares. I don't know why I said circles. Okay, and there's 10 here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 here. So there are 100 here. If I were going to color in 90 of them, it would be 1, that would be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. What do I have left? If I'm looking at these, in both cases, in my 9/10 and in my 90/100, the same amount of space is left, the same amount of space is taken. Okay? Excellent. So glad I was able to show you that. Let's look at the next page. So page 264. If you could please turn to page 264. Okay. Oh. All of the fourth grade teachers are saying hello to you right now. Isn't that nice of them? Okay. Okay. So 264, comparing decimals. You're going to do a lot of this on your own. I want you to take a look at, yep, you're going to do all this on your own. If you look at number 7, for instance, when we are comparing these numbers, we're looking at what's more or what's greater. So let's change my color a little bit so I can get a different idea. Yeah, they really want to say hi to you. Look, say hi. Okay, great. I'm going to turn them off right now. Super. So look at number 7. We have 27 and 5/10 and 8 and 37 hundredths. I want to show you how to think about this in terms of writing this out. Actually, let's go back to my chart here. 27 and 5/10. Let me grab my numbers here. So we have 27 and 5/10, right? You got that so far? Super. And then 8 and 37 hundredths. So then we have 8 and 30. Uh-oh, I need a 7. I need another 7. There we go. 37 hundredths. So in this case, when I'm looking at these, which one is going to be greater? When I look at it in my book, like when I look at it this way, this one jumps out to me as looking like it's less because we know that 2 is less than 8. What we are not paying attention to, if I did that, was the fact that my 2 is in a different place than my 8. So my 2 is actually worth 20 here because it's 2 10s. My 8 is only worth 8 1s. Definitely 20 has more value than 8. So when you are actually doing these kinds of questions here, I think that you should actually line them up according to decimals. So if I did this, instead of writing it this way, I would line up my decimal, 27 and 5/10, and then I'm comparing 8 and 37 hundredths. So 8 and 37 hundredths. As long as my decimals are lined up, I can properly figure out which one of these is greater, which in this case is 27.5. So when I'm filling my chart in here, 27.5 is greater. Look at, let's look at number 12, okay? So look at number 12. We have, let's see here, we have 0.09, which means 9 hundredths, and then we have 0.9. Notice how I lined up my decimals here. Can you see me? So I lined up my decimals here, right? In this case, I see my first 9 or my 9/10 has more value because it's tenths than 9 hundredths, which has less value. So in this case, in number 12, we have that 9/10 is greater, so we're going to say 9 hundredths is less than 9/10. Okay, we have that? All right, I think that we've pretty much covered our comparing and the value or not value of our zeros, which is really important. So today you're going to go back to your math, you're going to fill out and complete the remaining comparisons here. You're also going to put these in order. Now when you put these in order, notice it says, sorry, let's go ahead and do this. List them from longest to shortest. It actually shows you here longest to shortest. So when I look at the lengths of these insects here that I have, I'm going to make sure that I'm lining them up according to decimal. All right. Notice the bumblebee doesn't even have a decimal. So if I look at the bumblebee here as 2 centimeters, where is my decimal? Let's figure it out. If I put 2 here as 2 1s or 2 centimeters, where's my decimal? It's right here. Every whole number actually does have a decimal. And nothing else. So 2.0 is the same as 2. Can you see? You can't even see what I just did. 2 is the same as 2.0 because my 2 is right here, okay? So when I look at the bumblebee actually does have a decimal point. It's just hidden because we don't have to write it because there are no decimals, all right? So pay attention to longest and shortest, and then we're going to go ahead and read the final word problem and complete that. All right, on that note, I will say have a happy Tuesday and find a good thing today. I did see the sun peek through today. That's awesome. Wait, can I say hi again? Hi. Okay. Bye.